Welcome to another episode of OTA on the Air. My guest with me this episode is Brad Robbins from Berman Moving and Storage, who is the newly elected chair of the Ohio Association of Movers. So, Brad, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate you having me.
Well, I guess talk to us a little bit about what you're looking forward to as the new chair of the moving and storage group, and what you hope to accomplish in your time as chairman.
Thank you. I'm very excited about it. I think there's a lot of new and interesting opportunities, especially with our merger with OTA. I think it affords a lot of opportunities for movers to really embrace and understand the entire industry. So one of the things I'd like to do is really work with our moving members to really understand how the trucking industry works, that they can benefit from both the contacts that they make, especially with the interstate types of movements, as well as the resources that OTA has to help benefit them with services that they may need and don't even realize that they do need. Additionally, one of the big goals we have that has been festering with the movers has been rogue movers, illegal movers that don't do the right permitting, don't register properly with the state, and really try and work to better advocate to the consumers working with PUCO, so that they're better educated on what type of movers are safe and that they don't get hurt in the long run.
Yeah, you know, I this weekend I've been messaging on Facebook with it's actually an auction house that's renting U-Hauls to start doing moves, and they're marketing their services. And one of the members contacted me, so I've been in contact with them, and it's amazing how much and how challenging that regulatory process is. I guess talk to us a little bit about what that impact that rogue movers have on legitimate moving companies.
You know, it's a significant impact. And the challenge we face is, first of all, you know, like you just said, there's a low barrier to entry. Somebody could go rent a truck, throw up nowadays with technology, a website, and just say, hey, we move. But you know, the impact for legitimate movers is, you know, they can certainly undercut us in pricing because they don't have any of the costs associated with being legitimate. The workers' comp insurances, regular insurance, liability insurance, the protections we have besides the cost of registrations to the state and federal governments that regulate us. So they are able to do that. And, you know, we lose a significant amount. And we actually are talking about looking at some studies to see how much is truly lost to the industry. And it's probably, you know, in the millions if you add all the movers. Every mover you talk to can tell you of at least a handful of moves they've lost due to some unknown guy. And the problem is, and where we want to educate the consumer, is they're the ones that end up getting hurt. Yes, we get hurt, we get impacted by losing revenue, but they can lose their stuff, they can have things broken and have no recourse or claim because they're using somebody that they're probably either not going to find again or just will shut their doors and, you know, reform as a new company. So they don't back up what they do, where legitimate movers, be it independent movers or even, you know, those associated with agencies, have a much higher standard that they have to hold to make sure consumers are happy.
Yeah, you know, and I think that's that's the interesting part about it is I get into conversations about the regulatory world and how, you know, we've got the structure set up and how that prevents private business from, you know, acting freely. You know, and you they always bring up the example of like Uber and Lyft, and then the cab tokens that they had to have to be able to run a cab in a certain city. And I think the big, and you just hit on it, is the big difference is that, you know, in a consumer protection standpoint, that there needs to be that watchdog group out there that makes sure, because you're moving people's lives from one place to another, and they're entrusting you with everything they own, to be able to make that move.
Exactly. I mean, moving is one of the top 5 stressors for people that they face in their lives. And it's a very stressful time. As you said, it's personal, especially household moves is a very personal thing. It's your possessions, you know, and you're entrusting it. And people, because they think moving is easy, you know, from, hey, let's get some buddies and pay with beer and pizza until something breaks and you have to eat it, or they don't show up, or they take longer, you know, to Like you said, finding somebody and just thinking, I'm just going to get the lowest cost guy, not really thinking you're trusting people to come into your house. They know where you live. They know where you're going to live. They can look around and see if you have an alarm system. So you really want to, and that's why we really want to focus this, my term, on educating consumers, because you want people to realize that you need to trust the people going into your house, that you're letting them see what you own. They know if you have expensive things or not. So, who's to say they don't come back? And that's where, the legitimate movers are held to a higher standard. And, we work as our company, and, and we're talking about OMA, like I tell our customers, our clients certainly want them to sign with us, but we basically tell them, get 3 quotes. If you're not comfortable with our quote, don't get 1, get 3. And if 1 is way low, you better question why and really look at all the things that you need to do to make sure you are protected as a consumer, not just in the move, but after the move on who saw all your things.
Yeah, without question. And there again, somebody had said many years ago that the trucking and moving and start, it's an easy business, right? You move it from point A to point B and you try not to break it in between. But I think that's the bigger factor that you talked about as well is the claims side of it. And if something does get broken, especially as personal as those items are, I guess talk a little bit about how that complicates the work that you all do in, making sure that when something bad happens, and if it does, how you deal with that.
So, there's a couple different standards in the moving industry for when you move that you can have coverage to help protect you if things break, because things happen. I mean, even the most careful mover person packs it perfectly, and maybe the truck had to slam the brakes a little bit more, or maybe a guy slips when he's carrying something. Things do happen. Um, so we and most moving companies will sit down with you when we're signing up the move and talk about the different levels of liability coverage that you can have. There's basic free coverage, but it really doesn't cost. It doesn't cost the consumer anything, but it really doesn't cover very much. It's 60 cents a pound. It doesn't take into effect what the item is. Then there's higher cover levels of coverage that you can pay for, but it's like anything else. If you have valuable stuff, it's probably worth doing. Now, I will say that a lot of movers, they do not have to, but they like to have good customer service. So they'll work with clients that maybe even don't take the highest level of insurance and work it out if they truly made a mistake. If we packed it and we broke it, we'll probably try to help make it right. But if it's something the customer packed, we don't know how they did it. So we really work to educate them that you got to weigh out what you have for value versus what you're moving. And if you really are worried, if it's, and then we also tell people if something's truly priceless and valuable, move it yourself. Don't put it on the truck, put it in your car, because you just never know.
Right. I guess talk to us a little bit then about, because you've hit it on a couple times, but the workforce challenges that we're having in this country, and especially in the trucking industry, has to be much more complicated for moving and storage companies just because of the type of work involved. I guess talk to us a little bit about what you're seeing in the industry as far as getting a capable workforce.
Exactly. As we've talked in the past, it's a huge, very complicated, complex question where everybody is and why, because obviously it's not just the moving industry. Everybody's looking for labor, but we face an even more difficult task. We were having challenges prior to the pandemic situation with labor, partially because of, especially for the long haul CDL type drivers, we're competing with the truckers. And the problem is our guys have to actually move stuff, not just drive the truck. So it's very challenging to find somebody that's experienced enough but willing to want to do that extra work when there's such a shortage in the labor situation. They can work for other people. Additionally, even just the laborers, the guys who are just carrying the stuff, of course, we want qualified people. We don't just want to take anybody. But, the companies like Amazon of the world are taking a lot of drivers or potential movers away as drivers for their businesses. And while most of them don't tend to stay for more than a year, it's hard to get them back into these industries. So it's a challenge. That's the other part. We've been having multiple conversations with no clear-cut answer as to how to solve the problem. Everybody comes up with ideas, and we face the challenge because some of these guys, we don't even know how to reach out to them to contact them to let them even know for a job, because newspapers don't exist anymore. And while you have Indeed and things, this is not the same pool that tends to look at that type of place for their job. So it's a challenge, and we're trying to be creative, going into schools, going into high schools even, where, because not every person graduating school goes to college, and these are opportunities for them to maybe earn money while they're figuring out what they want to do. We're trying to be creative in how we find our people as well.
Yeah, I mean, and it's extremely challenging, I would imagine, because of, not only do you have, drug testing issues, you've got, obviously background check issues, and folks, you're going to have to make sure that they're extremely trustworthy, because you're putting them, inside of a home where one spouse may not even be in the same state when they're there. And in that process of moving from point A to point B, they may have gone out early or whatever the scenario may be. So, I mean, it's extremely complex, the folks that you're looking for to do that kind of work, and they're doing.
Yeah, and one other point to that, especially with the drivers, which I think the OTA has a similar situation, is the age of drivers. We have a significant problem that we need people. Our insurance especially is very strict. There aren't a lot of carriers out there that cover us, so unless you're self-insured, you're kind of restricted to somebody that's over the age of 26, because insurance companies won't cover you if you have younger people for the over the road type work. So it really, in a tight labor pool, we're really limited on the types of people we can find. And as you said, they have to, pass background checks, they have to pass drug tests and all these other things, because again, with liabilities or people's possessions, we don't want to take any chances.
So what are you seeing out there as far as is the horizon moving forward? I mean, it's a heavily regulated industry. It's one that has a lot of hoops and hurdles to run through, and you've got this rogue mover element to that, I guess. What do you see the next 10 years, in 10 years from now, what the industry looks like? Is it vastly different? Is it still fairly similar to how it has been currently?
I think it depends on the sector of the business. Of the residential, I do think you are going to probably see some changes because of the challenge of over the long haul drivers. I think you're going to find a lot of people having to adapt and change and be, either join some of these other app type situations where people want, because the younger generations seem to want to, not talk to people as much and want to just do things quickly. So you're going to have to, as your company, either create your own or work with companies that have those programs. I think you're going to find, the local moves, I don't think will change significantly, because again, it's local, it's point A to point B, it's hourly rates. So I think people are just going to have to continue to be creative in who they market to and how they attract that business. And then, I think people are going to have to just look to branch out to potentially other types of things. You're going to probably see, in my guess, in the long haul stuff, a lot of the bigger companies are going to be the ones that do it, because they're the ones that are going to have the drivers. So the smaller guys who are with agencies are going to probably be booking agents only, and then put it on their systems to find people to haul, because they may not have the drivers to do so. I don't see autonomous trucking impacting our industry if it ever even actually happens, just because there's just too much local, and people are always going to move. So the good part of this industry is it is never going to go away. Both in good and bad markets, people are constantly moving for various reasons, and cannot, do not, or realize that they can't do it themselves. So there's always going to be the demand. It's really a question of making sure that we keep the playing fields even as we can, and invoking, working with the government agencies to just really do the best we can to keep those players out that don't belong, and adapt our laws to adapt to the new changing technologies, so that we're all up to speed and not having barriers, because we have to do things in a very tedious, monotonous way.
So I guess talk a little bit about what your training programs look like for your employees. Obviously, a vastly different landscape than what the trucking industry is used to. I guess talk to us a little bit about how somebody gets into the industry, how they work through the system, and the training that goes and is involved with that.
Yeah, so I'll speak, for our company, and a lot of companies follow similar suit. As a laborer, we don't need significant amount of experience, and we are happy to bring people that are, like we said, young, out of high school. We do require 18-year-olds and older for our company, but we will train them on how to move safely, so that they don't damage and break things, and B, they don't hurt themselves, because again, it is a physical job. So our programs, we offer various opportunities at different levels based on experience, and everybody can always grow into it, from laborers who are directed what to do to leads who tell people what to do and know how to do things, how to pack properly, how to lift properly, how to use various equipment properly. Then we will, as they graduate, we will train them on driving the straight trucks that you do not need CDLs for. And we have in our plans, we have extensive training programs that we have to sign off on, and we make sure everybody's checks all the boxes off to make sure they're qualified before they're actually on their own and then become a lead truck driver. And those that are interested in CDLA type programs, we will sponsor them through truck driving schools to get their experience, if they'll come back to us and drive in that haul. So there's a lot of opportunities. We also offer, because residential is very different from commercial, we start most people on the commercial side because it's a little bit less strenuous and easier. And those that want to move to the household, we then train in that as well.
Yeah, I guess talk to us a little bit about that side of the business. When everybody thinks movers, they think about your house, but I guess talk to us about how that difference between office moves and residential moves, and how movers adapt to that.
Yeah. So commercials is a very vastly different type of move. There are probably not as many companies that are involved with that for a variety of reasons. One is it takes a lot more laborers to do the job, because they're usually big companies. I mean, you can have small ones, but we've had jobs where you need 20, 30 guys on the job for, a couple of weeks, because these are, massive companies. Additionally, you have people that can install or uninstall office systems that go with that. The quoting system's very different, where, household typically, somebody knows it's a formula, but they can look, somebody experienced at a house and say, all right, I know it's going to take, 3 guys or 4 guys, 1 day, 1 truck, 4 guys, 2 trucks, and they know it's basically an hourly rate. So if you're off a little, as long as you've educated the client, they know it's going to be what the actual is. A lot of commercial is bid based. So you really need to know what you're doing, because you're guaranteeing those numbers, or you're locked into a number. It's not necessarily hourly. It takes a lot more equipment. The good news is you're not usually lifting as much, but you need to have hundreds of dollies and speed packs and various types of equipment to move this kind of things. So it's a big industry. Finding the jobs is probably a little more challenging, because they're not always just posted out there the same way. People don't know who to call. So it takes a lot more on the sales side to be involved with who to contact, where to bid, and things like that. But for those that do it, that again is another one that will not go away. Most companies don't want to do things internally, or unable to, or don't have the equipment. So it's another area that I think is expanding in the moving industry.
Yeah, that should be an interesting. It would be an interesting dichotomy between the household moves, where you've got couches and dressers and beds and that scenario, as opposed to desks and computer systems and that side of it. Are you seeing that industry change? We talk a lot about COVID and work from home, and that whole side of it. Are you seeing the reality of people using less office space, not having any office space, or and then again, in that case, what are you being called in to move those pieces out of that business and potentially to an auction house or somewhere like that?
Yeah, we have seen actually a lot, recently. Obviously there was a period where there was very little activity because companies didn't know, but now that things are settling down, we've seen quite a few companies now downsizing their office space. So they're moving to smaller spaces, because either the people are telecommuting permanently or have some kind of hybrid system. So they're not all in the office at any given time. So they're using free floating space. During the pandemic, our installation division spent a lot of time reconfiguring offices to be safe, putting up the plastic barriers between desks in the cubicles, and all those kinds of things, reconfiguring, spacing it apart. And we're seeing more and more of that. Right now, nobody seems to be in the expansion mode. I think everybody's still in a wait and see, or in a downsizing mode. And that's where we've been busy with a lot. We've done a lot of decommissioning. We work with our clients that want to decommission. There's a tremendous amount of scrap and waste that goes. Most of them just want to throw it out. They don't want to be hassled. We work really hard with their permission to repurpose the things through, Habitat for Humanity or various other organizations that are willing to take some of these older furniture that are, decent but not new, and repurpose them so that they just don't.
So we talked a little bit about the moving side. I guess talk to us a little bit about the storage side of it. I mean, how does that, that marriage work, and what are some of the unique challenges that you see from a storage standpoint?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it actually piggybacks, because one of the things going back to the pandemic, we've had a bunch of companies increase their storage because they're downsized, but they don't want to get rid of things yet. So they've been putting files into storage or things that they don't need the access to as much, because they just realize it's probably cheaper to use storage space than office space to keep these kinds of things, especially in the digital world. So storage industry has multiple folds. You have self-storage that people are responsible themselves. They have to move it in and out themselves. People like us and other moving companies have a couple different kinds of storage. Typically, we have, short-term storage. People are moving. Maybe their new place isn't ready yet, but we put it into a short-term storage situation until the new house is ready. We have clients that have long-term storage, both commercial as well as residential, that just like a self-serve storage locker, put it in to us because we have a little better temperature regulation, probably more security than outdoor box because it's monitored, alarmed, fire suppressed. So people will do that. We have a lot of record storage because, again, with legal laws, people have to keep their records for so many years, and they just realize it's, the square footage in office space, it's a lot less expensive to use us. So we find a variety of different things. We have trade shows that keep their things in storage until they go out on the road, and then they just sort of put it back in. So I think you'll find everything from household goods, unfortunately or fortunately for us, we have people that literally have had vaults for over 10 years with storage that they don't even access, probably don't even know it's there, pay it every month, and probably by the time they're ready to do it, it's either going to be worth a lot of money because it's an antique, or it's not going to be worth anything.
Yeah, so that's always a kind of a unique piece, and I think the storage wars show out there. I guess talk to us a little bit about what happens in that case. I mean, you've got folks who get into a scenario where they keep paying for the storage and they don't even remember what's in there. I guess, have you ever seen a situation where someone, I guess, how do you dispose of that if somebody just all of a sudden quits paying after 10 years?
Yeah, it's, so I mean, we've all seen storage wars, and it's not 100% real. They kind of stage some of those things. I mean, I'm sure there's some values, but there is a procedure that you have to do. You can't just say, all right, they haven't paid me, I'm going to toss this stuff or resell it or use it myself. You have to post public notices. You have to show attempts to truly contact them to let them know they're delinquent. And after a period of time, if they truly are, you can dispose of it. A lot of times we just use auction places that just buy them up and then they do what they want with them. But we have opened some in the past, when we can't, and most of the time, 98% of the time, it's worthless. It's either donated or throw it away. It's not that lost Monet or something that's sitting in somebody's vault. So it's a very stringent procedure that you do have to follow. You can't just say, "Oh, you didn't pay me, I'm going to hold your stuff in possession." But we work with people to try and make it right if they truly are having a hard time. And
so I guess talk to us a little bit about what is the most unique thing that you've ever had to move. Give us some of the stories behind the scenes of just
there's quite a few, but we had to move one of the hospitals, one of their labs, like the entire lab. So we had to bring in special equipment with refrigeration because it had to be, I forgot what minus Kelvin degrees, and we had only like a 6-hour window to move it, or this stuff wasn't going to explode like TV, but it would go bad. And, so our liability coverage and insurance was astronomical. I mean, we were really nervous, but it went smoothly. We've had to cut out windows at times because, people, especially in households, get upset because they'll bring in furniture and then they'll do construction in their house and not factor in what was in the room, and all of a sudden it won't leave. You can't get it out. We've had to either tell them that we got to take it apart or rip it up. We've had the one that was the horror story to me. There was, I think, it had to be 100-year-old billiards table that was exactly that they redid their basement. There was no way this slate table was going to come out without having to cut, and they wanted to cut it in half. And it was just really, we're like begging them not to do this, but so you see things like that all the time where you just, you feel bad, but it's math, it's physics. If it's wider than the door and it's longer than the door, it's not coming out that door, no matter how many angles. Our guys are really good at Tetris, but sometimes they can't.
Yeah, I guess I never even thought of that scenario where somebody just redoes and redoes a portion of their house or renovates and
It's
then
surprising how much it happens. It
I'm
really
sure.
is.
I mean, that
You know,
stuff's already in there. You just push it off into the corner and put some plastic over it
What,
during construction.
and I'll tell you, if I wasn't perfect, we were looking at doing something in our house and reconfiguring and possibly building a small hallway and taking some of a bedroom away. And if I wasn't in the moving industry, I wouldn't have thought twice about it. Now I
Right.
go, I do this, I'm never going to be able to get this stuff out, make the angles anymore, but the contractor's not going to tell me that. So it's, it happens a lot.
Right. Let's turn back a little bit to the association as well and talk a little bit about, what we just discussed at our board meeting, our last board meeting, about what the future of OAM's, I guess, targeting will be in towards being more consumer facing. I guess, what are some of the things that you'd like to see the association carry out as far as, educating consumers on the move process?
Yeah, I think that's a real big focus that we want to do during this term because, as you said, there's low barrier to entry, and unless you educate the customer, we can do everything we are on our end, but it's going to be a losing battle because it's just too easy for people to pop up and disappear. So it's really focused. I think, we meeting with the PUCO and really working with them to help us supplement websites, public service announcements, be it on television, websites, radio. There's various different mediums to try and reach people. Putting together programs that may be in the communities to help educate too, working with the Better Business Bureaus and the realtors particularly and their agencies, because a lot of them are not aware of all these intricacies. They just want to make the sale, just say, okay, go move, or here's a couple names, and really don't know much about them, and helping them educate their clients, because the more satisfied they are, the less headaches, the better it is for everybody. So I think really working with them to find those mediums to reach the public.
Yeah, I think the interesting part is that there's very few, or people do very few, if any, moves during their lifetime, and it's something you're not used to, and you go out and you just really don't know where to start, and you don't know how to do that. And one of the unique things that we've talked about and have been doing is working with the realtors is the main conduit for getting to their clients to help protect them in the whole move process. And I think one of the interesting parts that I think we're running into is that, from what I'm hearing from the real estate industry, is people are paying well over asking price and even appraised value to get these homes. I guess, what are some of the things that the regular consumer should be on the lookout for when looking at a home bid or a home moving bid, because of the expense that's involved in that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. You need to factor in the moving costs as well as obviously the home costs, because it's probably more expensive. But if you have nice things, or not even nice, just things that you can't do yourself, the realtors, working with them to educate them, as we were touching on earlier, making sure you have reputable people using Better Business Bureau. I know we've talked about using more customer friendly websites for OAM, so that customers can see who are members, so that they're knowing that they're held to a higher standard, and working with them so that they make sure that those movers are licensed, they're insured, they're bonded, so that they have recourse if something would happen. And 98% of the time nothing happens, but it's also because you've got people that are well trained to do those types of moves, and that's what's critical.
Yeah, one of the things, the services that the Ohio Association of Movers offers is the tariff as part of that. And for the trucking folks who are maybe listening in, before deregulation, that was a big thing that every trucking company had to have, and that's something that has survived this process. I guess, talk to us a little bit about what the benefits are of being in the OAM tariff program as you are, and the processes that we have gone through in the past year to make sure that document is up to date.
So the tariff program is a regulatory thing that is put on by the PUCO, and OEM has spent a lot of resources and time to make sure the documents are current, up to date, that the members are educated on that so that they are in compliance. It also allows them to publish their tariffs easily if they use the OAM system versus on their own. They can get annual updates as part of our program so that they can make sure that they're in compliance with what PUCO requires, so that people can look that up. So, we've talked about putting, if they're not already there, links on the OAM site for consumers so they can look up the tariff rates of people to make sure that what they're being quoted is fair. They can also see what other companies charge to get an idea who's competitive and not. And if they see somebody's way off, then they can question it. So I think it's going to really help. So members that are part of the tariff program, I think, really get an extra line of security and protection by being kept up to date. The organization will work with them if there are compliance issues to make sure their forms and all their standards are met to the tariff.
Yeah, and for the mover members that are listening and part of the tariff is, we are doing regular updates on that. In fact, Erwin is right now in the process of looking for folks to serve on that committee, to that task force, to make sure that the tariff is up to date and is consistent with current business practices. So if you're interested, just email Erwin at erwin@ohiotrucking.org to be considered to be on that committee. So I guess what else is on your radar? What are some of the other big ticket items that you're looking to focus on during your term?
So I think, we do that. We also, want to try and improve our memberships. Of course, we want to get more people involved. We want to show what many of us that are members already, but also improve on is the value of membership. Besides being a benefit of the tariff, there are other benefits, not only through networking, working on best practices with other companies. We also, because of the wonderful affiliation now and merge with OTA, there's a lot of member benefits that people can have by being a part of OAM. So I really think working on recruitment and retention and showing people the true value of being part of OAM is a huge part of what we want to do, because there's a lot of benefits and savings that people can be by participating in this program.
Well, great, Brad. I very much look forward to your term as chair and working with you to make the organization better, and appreciate you taking some time with us today to talk to the members about your vision for the association. So thanks for being a part of this.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. I look forward to working with you. Have a wonderful rest of the day.
Great.